Hello, my witchy friends. Today I wanted to show you my absolute favorite reference book on witches and witchcraft history. If you are new here, please subscribe and join the coven. I have lots and lots of videos that have been months in the making, in the planning, coming very soon. You won't want to miss more witchy content, especially coming closer to Halloween. So this is the Encyclopedia of Witches and Witchcraft. And I won't be showing you the cover today just because this is a discarded library book, so it's in very bad shape. It's been well loved through the many years of its life, and this is by Rosemary Ellen Guiley, and there's actually a couple editions of this book out now. This is an earlier edition, I think from the 80s, but it's still fantastic. I'd really like to get my hands on the updated version, which actually has the word Wicca in the title, just to sort of update it with the more 20th and 21st century touch. Here's the acknowledgements, and there's a little introduction that we should just take a quick look at for 1 second. So it says, to most persons in the modern day, witchcraft remains a dark and mysterious subject. It is often regarded with fear. Popular ideas about witchcraft have been shaped largely through the media, which perpetuates stereotypes based on the gross exaggerations of centuries past. To complicate matters, the witchcraft of today is connected in name only to the witchcraft of the Inquisition. The purpose of this book is to provide information pertaining to the evolution of witchcraft in Western civilization, its history, beliefs, practices, and adherents. Many of the popular beliefs about witchcraft and witches are derived from a period in European and to a small extent American history from about 1450 to 1700. During these years, witchcraft was a matter of social, political, and religious conflict, and perceptions of evil. Witches were portrayed as obviously beings who worshipped the devil and worked harmful magic against their God-fearing neighbors, and we know that witches were often thought of as ugly. They're portrayed in terrible ways. They're flying through the air, attending the Sabbath, turning into animals. And that's our modern day perception of witches, particularly when we think of the Halloween witch with the green face, sort of like the Oz witch. And when we think of just the way that they've been depicted in popular culture. It says this encyclopedia covers various aspects of folk magic, sorcery, divination, ceremonial magic, occultism, and shamanism as they relate to witchcraft. And it is my intent that this book will help illuminate the reader's understanding of witchcraft. So let's just start paging through here. Of course, it starts with abracadabra. It makes a lot of sense. And Margot Adler, an American pagan and journalist. And there's a picture of Margot Adler right there. And we'll just go through until we find a definition that interests us. Oh, altar. An elevated place where religious ceremonies are conducted and where offerings are made to a deity or deities. The altar has ancient associations with the goddess and Mother Earth, who rule the wheel of birth, death, rebirth. In neo-pagan witchcraft, the altar is always placed within a magic circle. A magic circle. It usually faces either east or north, depending on the tradition and practices of the coven. There are no set rules in the craft for the construction of the altar. If the ceremonies take place out of doors, rocks or tree stumps may be used. Indoors, the altar may be a table, a wooden box or a board placed on boxes or bricks. Whatever the form or materials, the altar should not contain conductive metals such as iron or steel, since they could interfere with the energy of the ritual. Tools made of iron or steel. And there's a bunch of different objects of ritual and worship that you can include in your altar. So we have candles, a cup or goblet of wine, anointing oils, dishes for salt and water, a censer, bells, scourges, dishes for offering food and drink to the deities, images of the deities, a broom. I always keep a broom by my front door. It's good luck, and you never know when you might need it. And cauldrons. Cauldrons are needed in rituals. They can be placed on either side of the altar. Very cool. There's a section on amulets. Oh yeah. The Seder square. You can actually make bread that has the Seder square on it. I've been thinking about doing that for a fall video. It's this like mysterious square of magical words here. It says, although numerous attempts have been made to translate the Seder square into something that makes sense, it remains nonsensical. It was inscribed on walls and vessels as early as ancient Rome and was considered an amulet against sorcery, poisonous air, colic, and pestilence, and for protecting cow's milk from witchcraft. It's very cool. What else do we have? Thomas Aquinas. Radio. Arab astrologers here. This is such a beautiful woodcut. It has such nice illustrations. It's really, really pretty. Oh, Baphomet, Baba Yaga. Look at that. There's a little section on Baba Yaga, although not as big as I would honestly like it to be. In Russian folklore, a female witch who loved to roast and eat people, preferably children. She was as likely to pop an ace in the oven as she was a stranger. What a description, my goodness. She lived in a little hut beyond a river of fire in the thrice 10th kingdom. Oh, all sorts of gory things, but it stood on chicken legs, apparently. And Baba Yaga possessed a magic wand and flew in an iron mortar, a cauldron, that she spurred on with a pestle as she swept away her tracks with a broom. She had 2 or 3 sisters, also called Baba Yaga. if you're interested in Baba Yaga, I do a review of a book on the folklore of Baba Yaga. It's from a couple months ago. You just kind of gotta search for it. Okay, bibliomancy, black mass, blessed be. I see a lot of you commenting, blessed be, and I love that. In neo-pagan witchcraft and neo-paganism, blessed be is a widely used salutation or parting in conversation and correspondence. This is my favorite. A common variation is bright blessings. Bright blessings. They have a couple crystal meanings here. So there's bloodstone, semi-precious stone. There's all sorts of historical figures as well, with just enough information to get you acquainted with them. Oh, here's Book of Shadows, a book of beliefs, rituals, witchcraft laws and ethics, herbal and healing lore, incantations, chants, dances, spells, divination methods, Sabbath rites, and miscellaneous topics, which serves as a guide for witches in practicing their craft and religion. There is no definitive Book of Shadows for witchcraft in general. Each tradition may have a standard Book of Shadows, which may be added to or adapted by several covens, or separate covens, sorry. And there's bright blessings again. And here's brooms. Of course, we would expect there to be an entry on brooms. In folklore, brooms were the primary means of travel for witches, who mounted them and soared through the air at tremendous speed. The witch riding her broomstick has become a popular cultural stereotype. There are different theories as to why brooms are associated with witches. The most likely explanation is that brooms are a symbol of female domesticity. It's true, a tool of every woman, and most witches were women. In earlier centuries, it was customary for a woman to prop her broom outside the door or push it up the chimney as a sign to neighbors and callers that she was away from the house. From there, it was an easy step to believe that witches, who purportedly could fly, would use their most common tool and soar up the chimney on it. And let's see, in medieval and Renaissance times, the belief that witches traveled by broom was more prevalent on the European continent than in the British Isles. English witchcraft laws never specifically outlawed flying, and the brooms are mentioned only once in English witch trials. This is something a lot of people do not know. So, here's a fun new fact for you. Brooms are really not a part of the folklore of the British Isles. The trials in particular. There's also the flying ointments that they would use on their broomsticks. You hear a lot about that if you study witchcraft. And it says before mounting their broomsticks, witches first had to anoint themselves or their sticks with the flying ointment, a vile concoction that typically included hallucinogenic and or toxic ingredients. If they were inside a house, they supposedly rose through the chimney, though few witches brought to trial actually acknowledged doing so. Sorcerers as well as witches flew on brooms, though men were more often depicted riding on pitchforks. According to lore, witches flew their brooms to the Sabbaths, sometimes carrying along demons or their familiars. I will go through all these facts from a variety of sources. Closer to the fall, I'm going to do a broomstick care and anointment video for all of you, which will be quite fun and in the spirit of the seasons. Look forward to that. And we're just in the bees. Oh, we've reached the C's. Okay, what else do we have here? Calling down the moon. Or drawing down the moon. Oh, it says that you have to go and read the entry for drawing down the moon. Candles. Candles are here as well. Candles have a long history in witchcraft, in religious worship, magic, and folklore. Candles provide light, thus illuminating the darkness and repelling evil spirits while attracting benevolent ones. In liturgy, they are offerings of fealty to a deity. In magic, candles are used in various rituals and spells. In folklore, candles are associated with the dead. Okay. Oh, we also have cats and cauldron right after one another, so we have to make a difficult decision. Let's look at cats. Cats have been associated with the supernatural since ancient times. In various cultures, cats are associated with either good or bad luck, healing or harm. In folklore, the cat is one of the favored animal companions of witches, sorcerers, and fortune tellers. And it talks about how the cat was sacred to the Egyptians, how they were always faithful companions, that witches were said to be able to assume the shape of a cat 9 times, presumably because a cat has 9 lives. And black cats were said to be the devil himself. That's quite common knowledge. And though the black cat is associated with witchcraft, it is nevertheless considered good luck to own one in parts of Europe, England, and the United States. I do know that black cats get adopted a lot less frequently than other colors of cats, but black cats are the best. They have such unique personalities. It should never hold you back from finding a spooky feline friend. And then cauldrons, obviously it's an iron pot, and they have included this illustration of witches stirring up brew in cauldron. Beautiful, I love this style of artwork. The cauldron has had a magical significance in many cultures throughout history. In the lore of ancient Ireland, magic cauldrons never ran out of food at a feast. The early Celts associated cauldrons with fertility and abundance and revival of the dead. In medieval art, literature, and folk tales, the cauldron was in every witch's house, set over a blazing fire. Witches supposedly stirred up vile brews made with ingredients such as bat's blood. Before a Sabbath, witches prepared their flying ointments in cauldrons. And there's all sorts of things here. Oh, Caradwyn is here as well. Caradwyn is one of my favorite goddesses. She's the Celtic goddess of wisdom, intelligent magic, divination, and enchantment. She possessed the gifts of prophecy and shape-shifting, and presided over the mysteries of druidic bards. She was associated with water and the moon, which represent the emotions, the unconscious, and intuition. Her primary symbol was the cauldron, in which she made a magical brew of herbs, roots, and the foam of the ocean, prepared according to the movements of the heavenly bodies. Okay, amazing. And Caradwyn, it says here, is recognized in neo-paganism and neo-pagan witchcraft, and plays a key role in the initiatory and mystery rites of Celtic magic. There's also charms here. Chelmsford Witches, the Church and School of Wicca, Yvonne Frost, Circle Magic. I just love the page flipping noises. This is such high quality paper, so it just feels and sounds really, really nice. Here's the entry for Coven. The formal organization and working unit of witches. The purpose, structure, and activities of a coven have differed at different times in history. The origin of the word coven is not clear. Most likely it derives from the verb convene, which includes in its variants convent, which once referred both to a religious meeting and the place of a religious meeting. Chaucer used the term covent in Canterbury Tales to refer to the meeting of 13 people. Interesting. The term covine was used in 1662 in the trials of the Aldearn, Scotland, witches to describe the witches' organizations. One of the witches, Isabel Gowdy, likened the covines to squads. The witches were divided into these subdivisions because there were so many of them, Gowdy said. And this is quite a lengthy one. It even talks about historical beliefs about covens, and Alice Kittler, one of my favorite witches who was involved in early witch trials, and the coven and neo-pagan witchcraft factored in the development of Wicca, and covens still exist today. I mean, if you're watching my video, you're in one, so it's pretty amazing. Okay, we'll keep going here. Cunning men, cunning women. It says sea wizard. That's kind of weird. See, this is one of the things with books on witchcraft. There's often a conspicuous absence of discussions of cunning folk, which kind of is unfortunate because cunning folk are part of the history of magic and witchcraft, particularly in England and in Europe. So I'd be curious to know if later editions of this book deal with that absence. Wow, it's a beautiful illustration. Demonic exorcism, demonic possession. Obviously, this whole section is on demons because that's where we are. Oh my gosh, and they're always very scary little illustrations because we're in the demon section. The Devil's Mark. This is something you read a lot about if you are looking at books to do with the history of witchcraft, because according to medieval witch hunters, the devil always permanently marked the bodies of his initiates to seal their pledge of obedience and service to him. There's also the Devil's Pact. There's all sorts of different forms of it, and this is a long entry. It goes on for quite a few pages. Artemis, divination, druids. Here's drawing down the moon. An important ritual in some traditions of neo-pagan witchcraft in which a coven's high priestess enters a trance and becomes the goddess who is symbolized by the moon. The transformation is accomplished with the help of the high priest, who invokes or draws down the spirit of the goddess into the high priestess. The origins of drawing down the moon can be found in classical times. Ancient Thessalian witches were believed to control the moon, according to an old tract. If I command the moon, it will come down, and if I wish to withhold the day, night will linger over my head, And again, if I wish to embark on the sea, I need no ship. And if I wish to fly through the air, I am free from my weight. There's also this reference to Druids, an exalted caste of priests of the Celts, a barbaric tribal people who spread through Gaul, Britain, Ireland, Europe, Asia Minor, and the Balkans by the 5th century BC. The rituals and teachings of the Druids were highly secret and were passed on by oral tradition. Little is known about the Druids. Interesting. And here's E. We have elementals, which are low-level spirits that personify the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. The term also is applied to nature spirits, which are said to exist in all things in nature, such as animals, insects, birds, rocks, and plants. And then the elements as well. Elf arrows, the Witch of Endor. We won't get to that one today, but I'm going to do a part 2 of the encyclopedia flip through, just because I know that you want to see all of it, and I completely understand. This is fairies. So fairies are a host of supernatural beings and spirits who occupy a limbo between earth and heaven. Both good and evil, fairies have at various times in history been blended and confused with witches. During the witch hunts in Europe and the British Isles, accused witches were often sought to save their lives by claiming they were taught their witch arts by fairies, which seemed less malevolent than if they had been taught by the devil. It's a fascinating thing whenever people hear me talking about fairies in relation to witchcraft. They get a little bit confused, but they are related because people used to conflate fairies and witches. Belief in fairies is universal and ancient, dating back to pagan deities. Fairies come in all shapes and sizes and are known by scores of names. Among them, there's a whole bunch of them here, including leprechaun. And the word fairy comes from the Latin term fata, or fate. The fates were supernatural women who liked to visit newborn children. Oh, and there's actually a reference to Margaret Murray, more of like an old school, old-fashioned witchcraft scholar. She takes more of like an anthropological view of witches. Familiars. Historically low-ranking demons in constant attention to witches for the purpose of carrying out spells and bewitchments. Familiars usually assumed animal forms: cats, toads, owls, mice, and dogs were the most common, though virtually any animal or insect could be suspected. In witchcraft trials, if so much as a fly buzzed in the window while a witch was being questioned or tried, it was said to be her familiar. So you were really subject to the whims of the day. Anything could happen, right? Cats were the favored forms, especially black ones. The fear that all cats were witches' familiars was one of the reasons for the cat massacres that swept through medieval Europe. And thank God we don't believe in that anymore. We love cats. But it just shows us how far we've come, the way that we've reclaimed witchcraft outside of the trials. And there's this whole section on flying, footprints, foxfire, another word for jack-o'-lantern. And we're at G. And course, here's Gerald Gardner, the man chiefly responsible for reviving witchcraft in the modern West. He has a lot to do with how we understand witchcraft in the modern day. Garlic. There's a section on garlic. I know that Ukrainians see garlic as good luck, as a way of fending off evil, warding off evil spirits. Ghosts, hauntings, and witchcraft. Hauntings by ghosts and poltergeists are sometimes blamed on witches and witchcraft, particularly in areas where belief in and fear of magic runs high. And here's this illustration by Joseph Glanville. I have a copy of Joseph Glanville's Seducismus Triumphatus. It's kind of a tricky word to say. I have a copy of it. It's 1689, and there's lots of really interesting illustrations in it that I'd love to show you. Glastonbury, an amazing place to visit if you are interested in witchcraft and want to see some of the British manifestations of its history. Goblins. In French folklore, wandering sprites who attach themselves to households and both help and plague the residents. Goblins, they're the equivalent of brownies, of fairies in England and Scotland. Goddess is the Virgin on the crescent here. Gold. Well, Isabel Gowdy. Oh, I love all of the stories of Isabel Gowdy. They're so fantastic. The stories of Isabel Gowdy's wild escapades with the devil titillated and shocked her Scottish neighbors. Grimoires, of course, are a really important part of witchcraft history. They're ancient handbooks of magic, and some of them date back to ancient sources. They're often called black books. Here's the Book of Spirits from 1801. And the writers and users of grimoires did not consider themselves devil worshippers or evil. The conjuring of demons was merely one of many means to an end. Doing business with demons often meant making pacts with them so that he did not have to fulfill his end of the bargain. Okay. So this is H. Hag. You see this word reclaimed a lot in witchcraft practice and products and things like that. Hags appear often in folklore, where they are sometimes benevolent, wise, beautiful, and perpetually young. In Irish and Scottish lore, good hags help with spinning. Supernatural hags haunt the fen country of Great Britain, working in league with bogies, spirits of the dead, and creeping horrors. In the 16th century, the term hag was often substituted for fairy. Okay. Did not know that. You learn something new every day. Nathaniel Hawthorne. You might know him as the author of The Scarlet Letter. Does it talk about that here? It must. Unless this is a different Nathaniel Hawthorne, but I don't think so. Interesting. I'm gonna have to to look more into that because I didn't know he was connected to the Salem witch trials, but I might be wrong. Okay, Hermetica, Hobgoblin, Hex and Hex signs. Matthew Hopkins, one of England's most notorious professional witch hunters. Horned God. Okay, I think we'll look at I, and then we will say goodnight. It's got a lot of stuff on popes and iron. Oh, there wasn't very much in I guess that makes a lot of sense. And then we're at J, which has jack-o'-lantern. So a jack-o'-lantern is a phosphorescent light seen in marsh and swamp areas. I'll bet you that many of you did not know the origins of the jack-o'-lantern, which in folklore is either the manifestation or of a malicious lost soul or a death omen. Jack-o'-lantern is known by various names, including will-o'-the-wisp and corpse light in England, fairy light, and foxfire in Ireland. According to the most common legends, the jack-o'-lantern is a wandering soul who has been denied entry into both heaven and hell, clothed in a luminous garment or carrying a lighted wisp of a straw. It drifts about at night, scaring travelers and beckoning them to follow it into the marshes. Charms to protect oneself against the spirit include carrying an object made of iron, which is believed to repel evil spirits, or sticking an iron knife into the ground. I think that's the perfect place to close our flip through and say goodnight, but as you can see, there is a lot more for us to look through next time. So, thank you so much for joining me for this video, and I hope that you enjoyed looking at the Encyclopedia of Witches and Witchcraft with me. If you are a witch, I highly recommend getting your hands on a copy, preferably one of the newer editions. But have a restful sleep.